Hey everybody out there in YouTube land. This is Jen from Jen's Reviews from the Grave, and today I have the honor to be on my wonderful friends, the Horror Misers Monty G's channel, where he is talking about women in horror. I know I usually talk about penises, but I like vaginas too, so let's say the month of vaginas. Yay, vaginas!
Y'all ready for this? Hey, horror fans! Once again, it is me, the Horror Miser Monty. Hey, horror fans! Once again, it is me, the Horror Miser Monty G. Yes, we continuing my celebration of Women in Horror Month, and of course, I had to bring along my good friend, one of my favorite horror ghouls, Jen from Jen's Reviews from the Grave.
Hey everybody out there.
Okay. Now, once again, as I did last year, I interviewed 4 awesome YouTube horror figures, horror women. And so I decided to let Jen come along. So, Jen, what do you think about Women's in Horror Month? Do you think this was a great idea to celebrate women and what the accomplishment they have done in horror?
Yes, because, you know, horror, it's a very inviting and welcoming group. But like with every group you have, there's always some toxic jerks, you know, in there that think that women don't know, just because we don't have a penis, we don't know about, you know, it's only men that can talk analytically about horror and things like that. And that's not true. And, you know, I always think that horror is the genre that celebrates women the most. Even back when it was problematic in the earlier days, it still showed strong women. It was very much women who did a lot of the stuff that, you know, that didn't do it in other genres. And I think it's really cool that we're celebrating and not acknowledging that, yeah, women are very important to the genre of horror. Well, horror is a very women-centric genre in general.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because when you look at it, you know, as far as when it comes to the different genres of film, I think women do a whole lot better in horror as opposed to other genres of film. You know, even we still have that with the rom-coms and the sci-fi pictures and all the other genres of films. I think women have now put a nice establishment when it comes to portraying strong characters. Now, of course, it wasn't always the case when it comes to horror. It seemed like, you know, women were regulated to just sex symbols because, you know, for some reason in the early 80s, you know, you couldn't go to an 80s slasher without having a woman showing her chest or being nude.
No, but that's part of our power. You know, you can look at it that way, and I totally get where you're coming from, Monty. But I also think that, you know, our chest, you know, as in Crybaby, our bosoms are power, and so I don't think a lot of movies were doing that, but I think it does acknowledge that yes, this is part of being a woman and our mystique, and we get some of our power in our bosoms. You know, I can look at it that way too.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think you're one of the few women who actually have that point outlook when it comes to women as being exposed to sex symbols. Because most women didn't like horror because they felt as they were being objectified. Do you actually believe that women were being objectified when it comes to horror films?
Yes and no. It's like anything else. You can look at it as that, and there are some women that won't be like it. But you know what? There are some sexy women out there. And I've always been of the thing, if you've got it, flaunt it. You know what? If that is what gets you in this world, then flaunt it. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be a sex kitten. You know, sometimes the sex kittens also save the day too. It's not I don't see it necessarily as a bad thing. I can understand how some women wouldn't like that thing. And I'm not saying that that's all we are. But it is a part of being a woman is, you know, doing the whole femme fatale thing. And I feel that can be just as empowering too. We don't all need to be, you know, with glasses and a books. And I'm not knocking those kind of women either. It's just we're celebrating every part of being a woman. And I think it's how you look at something. It's how you look at it and take it. And if someone were to, not that anyone would ever call me a sex kitten, but if someone did, I wouldn't be offended. You know, I'd be like, thank you.
I know Marty finds it sexy.
Yeah. Marty's a little Marty's a little biased, but but I mean, really gorgeous women. I don't think that's a bad thing. Now, I understand, we want to be thought of as not just for our bodies, but we have brains too. But we should celebrate our bodies too. I know a lot of women who work very hard on their bodies, so let's celebrate that
Oh
too.
yeah, a lot of women do. They actually, work out, eat right, and do all the necessary to make them not just healthy wise, but physically wise. And not
Yeah.
just because they're trying to attract a man. They're doing it for their own self, for their own self image,
Yes, yes. If,
for their
if a
own
man whistles
positivity.
at you, it's just gravy, but it's for
Mhm.
yourself. But it's just gravy if or another woman, whoever, whoever
Yeah,
can
sure.
fill
Yeah,
your
man.
head.
Put it this way, yeah, if they're trying to even attract another woman.
Yeah, exactly. Or both. Who knows?
So, what actually, I mean, of all the genres of horror, why horror of all the genres of film? What led you or made you decide to enjoy horror the most?
Well, like that old drug PSA, for me, it was just literally one drop and you're hooked. And that was very much my thing with horror. I started horror at very early. I was 4 years old. I have this very vivid
You're
memory.
younger than I
And
was. I was
yeah,
6.
you were old by then. And
Uh,
it was American Werewolf in London. And I just remember being very just transfixed and like the moon and the wolves and the horror and the blood. And I was too young at that time to appreciate the humor of it. But as I got older, I could appreciate other things. And to this day, I love horror, I love moons, and I love wolves. I mean, it was a very powerful moment in my life. And like I said, I watched it once and I've been hooked all my life. Horror just says something to me. Horror, as weird as this might sound, horror has always been very comforting to me. I had somewhat of an unconventional family life, and so I found very comfort in horror. Like, at least we're not as bad as some of these people. None of my family are killing and eating people. So for me, horror has always been, as weird as it sounds, very comforting to me.
I can
It's like an
understand
old
that.
friend.
Yeah, I can understand that because the first horror film I watched was the Universal Monsters, The Mummy, and at first my
Mhm.
mother thought that I was going to be afraid of it, but as a child growing up, I didn't watch The Wizard of Oz or any other that kid stuff. I know I went to watch horror movies.
I did too. I did too. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want this kid stuff. I don't.
No, I don't like this nice stuff. No, I don't want to see the Brady. I never was into the Brady Kids or the Brady Bunch or all the other nice stuff like that. Give me a monster film. Let me see Ultraman. Let me see the Space Giants.
Exactly.
Let me see Christopher Lee as Dracula.
For me, it was more, let me see how they cut off this woman's head. Please.
Yeah, but I could understand an American Werewolf in London. Was it the practical effects that really intrigued you? Because
It was.
that's
It was the
because
practical effects and it was the scene, and this is probably going to sound very cliche, but the transformation scene, I must have rewound that because we had it on tape. With my parents were fancy and I had a VCR and I would
ooh,
rewind that scene over and over. And it also made me appreciate music because there's so much good music in that movie as
oh
well.
yeah, yeah.
And Blue Moon and everything else, and it just was magic. It's just like this was, like you said, with some kids it's the Wizard of Oz. This was like my Wizard of Oz. I mean, I just went down a path and I was just completely transfixed with everything on the screen. And it's just, there's a beauty to it. It is, some people might not understand it, but for horror lovers, there is such a beauty in the macabre and dark. And it's
Mm.
just, I've always just dug it. It's just like, it's like rainbow and butterflies to some other girls. Blood and guts and gore is my rainbow and butterflies.
Uh,
Oh,
so you
I was
did
a weird
you,
kid.
oh well, we're both we're both weird. Because it's like my mother takes me to go see Jaws, and my brother
Mhm.
went to go see Jaws when it first came out in 1975, and she thought it was going to have nightmares on it, but I had no nightmares on it. Like I said, I had a morbid sense of humor.
Mhm.
Most of my friends I grew up with, they would just look at me like I was crazy. It's like, honey, how can you watch that shit? I said, why? It's fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. My dad was very much the same when I started getting into like the big guys. Like Jason was my other big guy, and
Mm.
I remember part 6 came out, and my dad was like, Barb, I'll take her to it, and she won't even make it halfway through the movie, and we'll never have to worry about this stuff again. And he made the deal with me, if you leave, we won't get to watch this ever again. And
Mm.
then the movie was over, and I turned around, can we watch it again? Little Jen was like, oh, that was so much fun. You see the worms on the mask, Dad? Did you see the worms?
It was funny because when the original Friday the 13th came out, I actually saw the first images of Jason in the Fangora magazine. And then when I took my cousin to go see it, I didn't tell him what was going to happen until when he jumped out of the swimming pool and had the audience scream. I'm basically cracking up laughing. He wanted to sucker punch me.
It's always fun to do that to people that aren't into it the way we are.
All right, so basically, obviously you got into it in a very early age.
I did.
And when did you actually started seeing, obviously the big three when it came to Freddie, Jason, and Michael?
I started, like, again, I was about 7, 8, somewhere around there, and I remember my parents were like, we don't know what to do, but we made that deal, and so I was allowed to watch it. I was an only child, and my mother was progressive enough to think, okay, she's mature enough to understand that this is just art. It's not real life. She can differentiate the two between it. And so I started, and I loved all horror. Like, I got into every horror. And the other thing that I really think that did my horror education, and probably why I'm a YouTuber today, is my parents had USA. So I had an education from Commander USA's Groovy Movies. That was on almost every weekend. And so I would watch that. And then the only redneck, because my mother's a very liberal, tree-hugging woman, but the only redneck she ever let in the house was Joe Bob Briggs. We had the movie channel too. And so we would watch Joe Bob Briggs. And between that and Gilbert Gottfried and Commander USA Groovy Movies, I got a hell of an education. And I got to see schlock, and then I got to see more of the extreme, which is where my love is. Like, I love all horror, but the extreme horror has always been my bag. Like, I love the more messed up, the better.
I grew up with Dr. Shock, and that came here, I think it was Channel 17 here in Philly. And eventually we had a Stella was called Saturday Night Dead. Had a Elvira like person that lived in Manioc was called Stella, the man eater from Manioc, and she would always show B movie great horror films. So that was how I got into more horror, seeing some of the into some of the B movie horror films, and of course my mother just shook her head.
My mother, a friend of hers, always said she's going to turn out into a serial killer, Barb. And that's another thing. I don't know if it was the same with you, but like, because you're a guy, but there was a stigma about being a female horror fan, especially a young female horror fan. People thought it was really weird, and that I must be, this really masochistic little girl that, killed pets or something. And that could be furthest from the truth. And it seems very unnatural that women like horror. It almost seems to be unnatural that we were into this stuff. It should be only for guys, and that's not true.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. As a, when you got into horror very young.
Yes,
so
I did.
Did you get the stigma about being a horror lover, and people looked at you like you were weird and crazy?
Yes, well, they did that in fairness, Monty. It wasn't just because I loved horror, but it didn't help. And like, people did think I was weird, and I never understood it. Just because I watched this stuff it's just a way. It's just something we like. It doesn't mean we're going to go out and kill people, or we want to kill people. It's just a way to cope. It's just a way for us to get through. It's a fun way for us to get through stuff. And if you're not a horror lover, I guess it's kind of a weird thing, especially if you're a female. But I just fucking love it. And again, for me, horror is very comforting. It's a very comforting genre. So I've always loved it. But yes, I did get a lot of teasing and you're weird. And guys would get, and then when I got older and started to date, guys were never, until I found Marty, no guy I've ever been with was ever into horror.
Yeah, no, because Kelly, she's not in the horror. She's definitely not in the horror. So like say, it's like very few times she would actually go see a horror film with me. I think we went to see The Blackening last year. And then I think we went to see The Invitation, because I think she found those movies interesting, but she's definitely not a horror fan. But I think of all the women I've dated throughout my years, none of them really were horror fans at
Hmm.
all. You
Yeah.
know,
It,
horror.
it's weird because the women didn't particularly like it because they were like, ew, horror. And the guys were kind of turned off by it. And I thought, but it's fun, it's cool. But yeah, they would get turned off. Like I would try to show dates, movies, and stuff. And sometimes that's the last time I'd see them.
What? No, no, no. What movie you try to get them to go see?
Well, I mean, I would think these movies were cool. Like, I guess they were kind of extreme. You know, I love High Tension. I was dating one guy and I tried to show him High Tension, and they were
Oh,
like, no.
wrong movie. Wrong movie. That's it.
So
That's a wrong movie to show a non-horror.
I suppose it is, but you know, again, I guess we're kind of desensitized, so it's hard to kind of
Mhm.
gauge what's, you know, yeah. And I'm very desensitized.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, come on. That's by the time I was already in my teens. By the time I saw Ben, Woolard, and then saw The Exorcist, and all the and Halloween and all the other horror films that came out during the 70s. I was already desensitized by the time Aliens hit and Jaws hit out. So I was already desensitized by the time no, by the time I got into my teens. So it's like, but like I said, all my boys thought I was crazy.
Yeah. But the thing I find so interesting is that people who are into horror are usually some of the warmest and nicest people you could ever meet. You know, that we
Mhm.
get this stigma, but usually they're always the people that will try to help any way they can. And they're some of the, you know, we love this fucked up shit, but we're the nicest people, really.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I would say out of ever since I started my YouTube channel, and this is the first time that I've actually have enjoyed talking to horror because it's kind of difficult talking to horror to other people when they're not
Yes.
into horror. And it's like this
Yes.
is the first time I got a chance to really enjoy something that I really enjoy and everyone else enjoys. When we all love it. We might have our disagreements at times but we still enjoy it. We still enjoy the genre.
Yes, yes, we do. And it is nice. That's one thing I love about YouTube because growing up, I grew up in a very small town and I did have that stigma of being the weird girl who liked horror. And I had nobody to talk about all these cool movies I was seeing. And like you, I was very desensitized at an early age. I was watching Faces of Death like at 12 and 13. I was renting and I was like, oh my God, I love this. You know, and stuff. So I love that now we're in an age where we can connect with like-minded people because there's a rush talking with you guys like we do horror hangouts together and talking with you and Triv and Sean and everybody else. It's a really cool thing to
Mhm.
find like-minded people.
Now, when it comes to obviously, women in horror month and what we've seen so far in women in horror films, like I said before, we've seen a real drastic shift about how women are portrayed in horror films. Just like we mentioned earlier, how women were just simply where most people thought women were objectified, and some of the actresses didn't like it. That's why they never wanted to be in the horror film because they felt as though they're being objectified. But now we've seen this tonal shift where they're no longer as the damsel in distress like we saw back in the Universal monster films or in the sci-fi monster films that I saw, from the 50s and 60s that I saw during the 70s
Mhm.
and like in the 70s. But what do you think about like movies like I Spit on Your Grave and Revenge?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up because
Mhm,
I am I did do I am a survivor. I am a
mhm,
survivor of this. And there's usually two camps. There's people who are survivors who can't watch it, and then there's people like me who I find it very very comforting and very very therapeutic to watch these kind of movies. And I totally understand the people, especially if they're survivors like me who can't watch this stuff and go, "Whoa." But for me, the revenge and the taking our own power back, especially with the movie like I Spit on Your Grave, it was taking her own power back and doing it for herself, and that was healing and cathartic. And I thought it was such a wonderful movie. And if you know the backstory of that movie, it was based basically kind of on a true story. The director actually saw a rape victim. Right, they were in the park and they saw a police picking up a rape victim, and he just happened to be there, and that's what gave him the idea. It's a fascinating story if you know the story behind I Spit on Your Grave, and she got turned. It was back in the 70s, and so they didn't treat the rape victims the same way they do now with the sensitivity. And even now, there's problems with it. And so I find that movie very, very empowering and therapeutic. And I see other people's arguments, because I know even back then people were like, this is just schlocky and for shock value. But no, it was actually to show how strong women are, and we take it back. And movies like Revenge the same way. I find them very therapeutic.
Yeah, because because growing up in the '70s, at when that movie first came out, and then you had The Hills Have Eyes, and then you had
Yes.
Last House on the Left. It
Yes.
seemed like the directors were trying to outshock the last whatchamacallit. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, well, I'm going to do this, and or
Mhm.
I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It seemed like to me it wasn't really about horror. It was about how much depravity and how much violence I can put on the screen and get away with it.
Yeah, I can understand that. For some movies, it might be like that. Now, for I Spit on Your Grave, like I said, it was a very personal journey. And they were also trying to show you basically, again, one of the wonderful things that I love about horror is that we might be showing one thing, but we're generally talking about something else. And while he's showing these brutal rape scenes, he was also showing about the justice system, because everywhere she turned, like with the cops and everything else, they were treating her like dirt, like she was the one. She was the bad one. And, because what
Mhm.
were you wearing and stuff like that. And that was kind of a metaphor of what she was going through with the justice system. And that's one thing I get so enraged when people go, oh, horror is the lowest common denominator. And some of it is. We've seen movies like Blood and Honey and things like that are just cash grabs, but there are so many movies that are cerebral and that are talking way more than zombies or vampires and werewolf. That's what we're showing. But if you read between the lines, there's so much deeper, and we're talking a lot about, and again, horror is something that is not afraid to talk about taboo subjects that polite society can't handle. And I've always loved that. Horror has balls. I think that's another reason I love horror. Horror has balls. It has balls. So
Yeah, because horror does take some chances when it comes to certain premises. When it comes to, I would say, a movie like Jennifer's Body. Now,
yes.
the one thing I really hated about Jennifer's Body is because there was a message there that got lost because unfortunately, the studios didn't want it to market the film that the way Diablo Cody wanted the film to be. They
Yeah.
says, "Oh no, no one's going to see this film. The only thing we're going to market is we have to have adolescent teenage boys go see Amanda Seyfried and Megan Fox make out for 15 minutes." You know, because that's the only way we get people to make money. When they should have just focus on the relationship between Needy and Jennifer, because that's what the film was about, not about 15 minutes of two hot girls making out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and again, like I said, horror is always fearless. They're going to go places, and they're going to go way ahead of other mainstream movies and stuff. And sometimes studios meddle. That's another reason why this channel loves the independent scene so much, because
Mhm.
they don't have so much of the studio interfering, and we can get our message out across. And I'm not knocking the funner movies of horror either. Like, I love my silly, everyone knows how much I love Sleepwalkers and The Orphan too. But what I really love about horror is the cerebral, the Onion movies, the movies that have layers and are talking about so much more than what you're seeing on the screen. I just love those kind of films.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, because like I said, because we had that, and we know, like I said before, when it comes to horror films, obviously the biggest trope in horror films is the so-called final girl.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, we had Laurie Strode, we have Ellen Ripley, and then unfortunately we have some of the all final girls from the Friday the 13th films, and then all of a sudden the final girls started to transitions, and then next, we know we have Sidney Prescott.
Mhm.
She's a different final girl as opposed to the other final girls we have. Do you think the final girls now are finally getting the respect that they have probably when we first started with Laurie Strode?
Yes, I think, but see, I've always had respect for final girls, and they've, just like you said, evolved. And I think that there's always been quote final girls, and there's so many that are under talked about. We all know Laurie Strode, we all know Sidney Prescott, but there's so many great, and they're also the villains. And it's not just
Mm.
the final girls, but another thing that a horror shines a light on, and it's a movie that you and I both love. No one else ever talks about it. The Boy Behind the Door. That is a
Oh,
movie
oh
that
yes. Ooh.
showcases the villainess, because because, you know, women can be loving and caring and supportive, but when we go off the freaking deep end, Monty, we can be, I mean, we're worse than men. This is one thing. We can be a nightmare compared to men. And I
Yeah.
love that horror showcases that too, because that's a side of woman too. Really, horror showcases all the wonderful facets of womanhood.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed The Boy Behind the Door so much, because it was written very well. The two boy actors were fantastic.
Fantastic.
They were fantastic character film, but the twist
Yes, has your
about who
jaw on the floor. Like,
it's like you never ever suspected that to happen. And I was
because we're
like,
conditioned as a
I
society.
know, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, and it makes it 100 times worse.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so no, that's why I was so surprised. That's why I was like, oh man, that's why I was telling people, if you haven't seen it, please watch The Boy Behind the Door. I was telling
It's so
everyone, you
good.
got to watch that movie because it's so great.
It is. It's so great. But the Final Girls and all, I think I don't see it as bad as any of them. Even, and this is a very controversial horror opinion, but even our character in Night of the Living Dead, Barbara, like the original Barbara, people think she's a dish rag, and she's not like the strong badass one of the remake of the 90s. But what I like about Barbara is she is in shock. She is showing trauma, and I think, why do people give her shit? Because that is another human emotion, and people always single that one out, and I get why, but there's all kinds of facets. I think that's another thing I love about horror. It shows different kinds of people. It's not just, we're not cookie cutters, you know what I mean? There's different types of people, and I like the trauma that movie brings out. And I think she's just as good a final, well, it's not a final girl, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know, because you have to understand at that particular, at that, what the movie is representing. It's like you never saw a situation like that before, so obviously she is just projecting what a normal person should do. She freaked out.
Yeah.
It's like
she's in shock. She
in
saw
shock.
her
I mean,
brother. I mean, if you saw someone you love get murdered right in front of your eyes, you sometimes will get into the badass mode. Again, it depends on people. People are people, and that's a very appropriate thing. And I thought the actress handled it beautifully. Like,
yeah,
I don't ever get why people hate on that that character.
yeah. I think it's because you have to understand, at the time when the film was made, as opposed to the remake was that George Romero did that. Was it George Romero did the remake?
It was it was a makeup artist. I can't think of
Greg. I think the guy that does The Walking Dead. I know his name, Greg something.
Yeah. It's I know this much. I swear I did. But yes, famous. We all know who he is, and he did the remake, and it was panned at the time, but now it's kind of become a cult classic. There, and then Bill Moseley doing the line, "They're horny, Barbara." They've been dead a really long time.
No, it was directed by Tom Savini.
Tom Savini, yes. I had a mental. I swear,
I
I
had
love
a mental break too. I thought it was Greg Nicoteri from The Walking Dead, but it was Tom Savini. He did that one, and like I said before, I like the fact they kept the black man. Tony Todd was in the film.
Yes.
They had the woman that plays the Barbara role, and she has a nice progression throughout the film. She's scared at first, but then she becomes a badass at the end.
Yes. It's a good, and a lot of people prefer that Barbara over the original, and I can understand why. But let's not hate on the original Barbara. I think she needs some love too.
You're not a fan of sci-fi horror, are you?
And that would be my boyfriend. That would be the tragedy.
I know that.
I'm not. I respect sci-fi horror, and I do enjoy some of it. But the sci-fi is not my bag. Sci-fi is not my bag. I'm more into just straight up horror. But I respect sci-fi. I do, and like Ellen Ripley. I mean, talk about a badass. Talk about a badass.
So, like I said, I think I've known you guys, I don't know, almost 10 years now, I think.
It's been a while since we've been on YouTube. You were one of our first friends. You embraced us and welcomed us, even though people were like, "Stay away from her." No.
Stay away. She's great. She's fun.
She's a pervert.
Oh, trust me, I've been around a long time.
I know you have.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, it's one of the things that fascinates me when it comes to women in horror. Is like from the stuff they do in front of the camera, and then we have the women that are working behind the camera. We have a lot of women directors and women writers,
Yes,
just like I think it's Aaliyah Cooper. I forget her name. The
you
one
were
that
right.
wrote, yeah, Cooper. She the one that wrote *Malignant*, and
Hmm.
it's like that's fascinating. And of course, I know you don't like the fact she helped make Megan.
No, I'm not a man, but I am a fan of women, whether they're in front of the camera or behind the camera. I am a fan of women in horror because I think we bring a lot to the table too. And I'm not knocking men. I fucking love. I mean, I love men, but I love the fact that women can. We've got a lot to offer too. And I think that is one thing. Horror, like every other genre, is behind with women and other diversity. But we're getting better. That is the one thing I will say. We are starting to see a lot more diversity, and again, horror is kind of leading the way with diversity, and which is the changing times with not just with whether it be race or sexual preferences. We're horror again, it leads the way. There was a wonderful movie from last year called Swallowed that was just fucking phenomenal that nobody saw, that dealt with a lot of wonderful things, and but women too, women bring a lot to the table.
Oh yeah, I saw that movie. It was a different approach, but it actually dealt with a condition that some people have.
Yes, yes, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's but women in horror, the just I love the fact that nowadays we are really starting to see, and you didn't see very many women behind the camera back in the old days. Mary Lambert was kind of one of the, not the first, but definitely
Mhm.
one of the, that's one from my time that I can remember.
Oh yeah, I thought she did a fantastic job as one of the better adaptations of Stephen King's work, and
Yes.
she did a pretty good job with her version of Pet Cemetery.
Yes, and I even love the sequel. I know I'm in the minority, but I love her sequel as well.
Yeah.
But I would say that Pet Cemetery is a masterpiece and helmed by a woman. And I don't know. And she came up with some of the ideas. She was like, for Rachel to be played by, or not Rachel, but for Zelda to be
So,
played by a man, but to be played by a man, just to make the audience know there's something off, but we don't exactly know what it is. And that is a brilliant idea. And I think that's one of the reasons why that movie is so unsettling and unnerving.
oh yeah, I mean that's one of the best parts of the film is seeing Zelda in
Mm.
that condition. It's
I'm
like,
gonna twist your back like mine so you'll never get out of bed again. Yeah, I love that scene. Yeah.
so here you are. What decided you and Christian to do a YouTube channel? I mean, why do a YouTube channel? What led you to create this YouTube channel and create Jen's Reviews from the Grave?
I just started watching YouTube, and I would start, because I was interested in horror, I would watch people talk about horror. And there were some really great people, but there were some other people that I thought, I could do this. And I know that might sound a little bit, but I did. I thought, I know what I'm talking about and stuff. And I would be arguing with the video, not that anyone would be hearing me. And I kept talking about it. And it was actually Sparky Christian who really was, they were my biggest cheerleader. And they're like, just do it. If it's bad, we'll take it down, whatever. And that's kind of where it started. I wanted to talk horror with like-minded people and maybe make a few friends. And I thought nobody would watch me. Like, I figured, and if someone did, I figured it'd be like, please get off the internet. We hate you. You suck. Which probably people still do, but there's a few people that actually like it. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
well, you have, because it's like this. When I started my YouTube channel, because I was watching, let's see, before they changed the channel, Bloodbath Beyond with Jay, the
mhm,
horror show with Cecil and his crew, obviously the horror addicts with Gory and Danny,
mhm,
spooky astronauts with Emma, and then Vicky with Nightmare Maven. And I was
mhm.
watching all those, and I said to myself, wow, there's a whole community that likes horror like I do. You know what? I could probably do this.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like, and you feel like that this is your people, and you feel like you can talk. And I'd love to talk with some of these people, and discuss horror and things.
Hmm.
And I was very lucky. And then I get to share something with one of my kiddos. Like, Christian is such a big part of the channel, and we really bring out. We're very different people, but we bring out the best in each other because we're such different people. It makes an interesting viewing thing, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
At least for Christian's part. I don't know about mine, but Christian's
Oh
interesting.
yeah. I think he's one of the first people I ever heard that didn't like Scream.
Yeah.
He cracked me up when he said that. I said, "Oh man."
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because we're from different generations, and I love, and it's the one thing, it's like our bonding thing. It's the one thing we share that we can talk about and be on the same level. And I love it when we talk movies, and I love it when we have different opinions because I think those are some of our most interesting conversations. And again,
Mhm.
it shows we can have differing opinions and not hate each other's guts.
Mhm. I
So
see. No, now, of course, being a mother, and obviously you have a younger son. If you're, if you were advising mothers, what do you think would be an appropriate movie for to introduce children into horror?
depending on how old they are and also what kind of child you, I think you have to really know your kiddo. And like there are some kids like you and me who can get started on horror very early on and go out to be very halfway well adjusted people in my case. You really have to know your kiddos. I think the for me the movies that that I can remember that I started out that I think that I showed to my kiddos, I think Freaks is a very, when your kid's about 13 or 12, I think Freaks,
Mhm.
because it also shows them about humanity. I think that is just a movie that everyone should see. Just as a, if you want to grow up to be a decent person, watch the movie Freaks. Another one is I think Fright Night and Lost Boys. If again about the 12, 13 mark, I was a lot younger when I saw those movies, but
Mhm.
if you're a little bit more conservative, Fright Night and Lost Boys, and for Fright Night in particularly, because then you'll be curious about other older movies, because they make a lot of nods and references and stuff. Those are movies. Dark Harvest came out last year. I think that is a great gateway horror. I think that is a
Mhm.
great one. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I know that wasn't a beloved one, but that's another one. It just depends on your kid though, and what you think it can handle. You got to know your kid. And if I thought either one of my kiddos weren't ready, then that's fine too. But luckily, they came out pretty relatively normal, even for me, even for having me as a mother.
Uh,
You know, they
Now,
did. So
obviously, being a woman who has a horror channel, I'm pretty sure you've had your fair share of trolls
yes,
trying to say, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a woman. I'm
yes.
pretty sure. How have you learned how to deal with trolls that make comments on on your channel?
For some reason, I get a lot of religious people. Those are the ones that really hate. And I don't have a problem with, whatever gets you through. I'm a pagan girl myself, but whatever
Mhm.
gets you through this world is religion is like a penis. It's great to be proud of it, but don't shove it down everybody's throat. You know what I mean? That's how
Mhm.
I look at religion and stuff. But for some reason, I get a lot of religious comments, and I just I don't feed the trolls. I'll take off the comment and leave it off, and just
Mhm.
kind of ignore it. That's how I do. But I'm also a very sensitive person, and so there have been a couple comments that have kind of generally hurt my feelings. But you just have to if you're going to do this, you kind of have to develop somewhat of a thick skin. You know, that's that's what you have to do. Everyone handles it differently. But
Mhm.
just because I have a vagina does not necessarily make me any less confident to talk about horror than someone who has a penis.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, you're just giving your opinion. That's all you're doing. It's like you're not saying I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. No, you're just giving your opinion. You either agree with me or you disagree with me, and that's fine. We all move on.
Yes, and see, I don't do it for this channel. Like, I just am giving you my 2 cents, but I think everybody's opinion is valid. Like, I've never
Mm,
understood this thing in the community. If you pick on a movie, or you love a movie, or you hate a movie, and someone gets so, it doesn't take away your love or hatred for a movie. Love what you
yeah.
love, hate what you hate. I'm just here to try to make you laugh. And if you like listening to horror, you might like listening to me. I am not saying I'm a movie god by any stretch of the imagination, and neither is Christian. We're just two jerks who happen to have a channel.
Yeah, yeah. All we do
We
is like,
don't even like horror. I'll let you know, we don't even like horror. We're fakes. We're fake horror fans.
oh boy. All right, now I'm gonna throw this question at you. If you had an opportunity to actually write a character, a female character in a horror film, what type of character would you create, and what would she be? A final girl, or would she actually be the villain?
A villain, I think villains because, it would be a tragic villain, like it would be a meaty villain. There are because there's so many mothers in horror that especially particularly mothers, that aren't necessarily bad. They're just they're mentally unbalanced, and it's not the same as being deliberately cruel or being abusive because they're in their right faculties. That's what I love about horror. There's so many layers you can do, but I would totally go for a villainous, just a villainous bitch. Something like my beloved People Under the Stairs, Mommy from People Under the Stairs. That is one of the most brilliant performances ever. I love that performance.
Yeah, because we've actually had some crazy ass mothers when it comes to horror films.
Yes, and what they say, the hand that rocks a cradle is a hand that rules the world. Mothers, it really is. It's a job that you have to take very seriously, because this is what you're putting out in the world, literally, if you think about it. So I always, whenever there's mommy horror, there's a wonderful movie, Mothers of Monsters, that came out a few years back.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Really
That was decent.
That was an amazing movie. I love that movie. I've always loved that kind of, I really love that kind of horror too. And I love that. That just hits my jam, probably because I'm a mom.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because I was watching that movie, and I both the actors and the actor that played the mother and daughter, they really played off each other very well. And I
They
thought
did. An unreliable narrative, and I love it, and horror does this so well, where you don't know who, you'll get different sides of a story and you don't know who to believe. There's other examples. Resurrection is another one. For half of the movie, you don't know what's going on or who to believe, what character to believe, and I love those kind of movies.
I see. So when we like I said before, we've seen a lot of women, obviously, as far as how far they've come in front of the camera and behind the camera. Obviously now we're seeing a lot of there's going to be a lot of seeing a lot of trans people, trans movies coming out like that. I know Paramount, they tried to do it with They/Them, which I
Yes.
really thought was could have been a great way to get that subgenre into horror, but unfortunately dropped the ball with that. But what are your feelings about now? Because I know you've seen a few of those movies.
I have. They/Them is, I don't think it completely failed. They didn't, like you said, they dropped the ball a bit, but I believe their heart was in the right place. And I don't think they were doing it to just check boxes or try to, I think their heart was in the right place. What I say to They/Them is, there is another movie, and Christian turned me on to this one, a movie called Strange Circus. And that is a movie that really deals with some subjects, but in a very nuanced and smart way. And I won't get in too deep about the plot line, but check out a movie called Strange Circus. And there is other representations of trans horror as well. And but then that's always been there. Even as bad, as rough of a thing it is, Sleepaway Camp even dealt with it way back in the 80s. I mean, it's always been in horror. Again, horror is always the forefront of taboo subjects.
Yeah, because I don't think we ever seen in any movie. That's because I remember seeing that, watching that, and we get the final scene where the guy says, "Oh my God, she's a boy."
And the sequel kind of, but they kind of, I wish they would have gone a little bit more into the whole, but for what it was, this was, that they weren't intending to make the kind of movie that it's now reads as. But it's interesting all these years later of things we can pick up and really, that it relates as much to today as it did back then. Yeah, but I hope we get more trans horror, because again, representation is very important. Look at Prey. I mean, that's another thing where we don't get many characters that look like that, and it is so important to see people that look like you, that have your same story or your same experiences. And that's and I think again, horror is going to lead the way.
I know. I was really very, very proud of Prey, and the fact that they actually not only did they actually cast a Native American in the lead role, they cast a woman, and they cast a whole bunch of Native Americans in that role. So I was very proud of that production. They didn't try to whitewash it.
No, and you can even get it in the actual native language as well. They have a copy where you can get it in the actual, which is very cool. And it preserves our history, because I'm a part Native, a big chunk of me is actually Native American. So it's always cool to see representation. And you figure stuff out. Movies teach you things. And when you see someone that looks like you, it's important. People ask, well, why is it so important for this or that? And people get so mad, because we need to see things that reflect what our experiences too. And that includes everybody, whether it's race or sexual orientation or whatever.
'Cause I know Coriander from the Night Watch Zone, she was very, very happy
Hmm.
about the
She
movie because
was.
she's Native American and she was very proud of what they did because she said mostly all the stuff they did in the movie came, was something that she knows about because that's part of her heritage. And that's why I was very proud of the fact that they actually make sure that they incorporated mostly everything in the Comanche heritage.
Yes, yes, and they did, and they got it for the most part very, very right. And
Mm.
that's and again, the other movies like that, they slash them tried to do that, but they didn't get it quite right. But I do feel that their heart was in the right place. I
Oh
didn't go
yeah.
after too hard in that movie because I think the heart was in the right place.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know I'm pretty sure the premise, what they probably wrote down on paper, they thought was good, but I guess whatever they came up with, kind of missed the ball a bit, as far as I'm concerned. But I did like the fact that they did try.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next one might even be better. We just gotta hope and be receptive to it. And because that's how tolerance is. Film also helps with people's tolerance. You see a movie about something you know where we fear what we don't understand, what we don't know, and the way to dismantle that is to experience it. Movies let us walk in people's shoes that we might not have the same experiences with, and we have empathy with it that way. Again, another brilliant thing about horror.
So my final question for you is going to be, what do you want as far as women to continue, as far as women is concerned, how they're portrayed in horror films, being in front of the camera or behind the camera? What is your expectation for the future?
I want to see more vicious roles. I want to go deeper. I want to go darker, and I want women behind the camera to do it because men always have they're the ones that can do the nasty and stuff. No, I think women can be just as depraved as our male counterparts. We can be just as messed up. I want to see a woman's version of a Serbian film. That's what I want. I want to see a woman's version of Necromantic. I want to show that women can push the envelope with just as far, if not farther, than any man can. Power.
Yeah, you can see a woman actually create a character like what's her name? Darn it. The baby's character from Rob Zombie's
Firefly.
yeah, baby
Yeah.
Firefly, something like that. You know,
Exactly. And
you know.
Sherry Moon Zombie, talking about women in horror, gets you've heard me talk about this many times,
Oh
Monty.
yes.
But Sherry Moon Zombie gets so much shit, and I think she is a brilliant actress. I do, and I like her performance in Halloween. I know I'm in the minority in this. I think was fucking underrated, and I think she's I know people are going to give me shit of this. I think she's a brilliant actress, and she's gotten better from every movie.
Oh no,
It's not just because she's Rob's wife.
yeah, no, I really had no problem with her performance in Rob Zombie's first Halloween.
Mhm.
I thought I really didn't really understand her character in the sequel.
Nobody did. Horse
No,
of symbolism.
it's not that she did a bad performance. I just didn't understand. No, I mean I understood that, but I just didn't think. I guess because even though I understand the White Horse a little better now before then, but it's still
Uh-huh.
just like it kind of put the whole thing off for me.
Oh,
You
it
know.
did. That movie, it has its. I love it, but it does have a few problems, just a smidge. But I still defend those movies. I've defended those movies before they were cool. Thank you very much.
I know. Yeah, I know. You're one of the few people that actually loved actually loved Halloween and is Halloween 2, his sequel. Yes.
Yes, yes, I always have. I was ahead of the cool people.
All right, Jen. I want to thank you very much for coming on and participating in Women in Horror Month because really enjoy you and and your energy and your passion that you always have.
Oh, it was an honor because I know some of the wonderful people you've interviewed in past years, and I'm just honored to be among them. And it was so nice of you to be nice. You were probably thinking, oh, I'm just going to be nice to the poor girl, throw her a bone, I know she's a fake horror fan, but we'll just humor her. We'll just humor the fake horror fan. But no, it was an honor to be asked, and thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
If you have not subscribed to Jen's Reviews of the Grave, her link for her channel will be in the description box below. So please subscribe to her, and Jen, you'll enjoy Jen and Christian, or Sparky, you want to call them, Jen's Reviews from the Grave. And you can see Sparky and you can see Sparky hate on screen, although he did like the last one.
Until all this happened, the world does not want that child to like Scream. But and also it's Monty's box. My box is only for the Trash Picture Show.
Okay.
Thank you
All right.
much.
All right, Jen, do your outro for me, please.
Thank you guys for watching, and bye. And remember, we love penis on as much as we celebrate women. We love penis on Jen's Reviews from the Grave. Whee! Bye, guys. I hope I didn't ruin your channel, Monty.
Okay, guys. And once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Monty G. Thank you very much for watching. And always remember that horror rules. And y'all guys stay safe out there.
And